middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Welcome everyone to another episode of Two Middle-Aged Guys Trying to Work It All Out. This is a very special episode.
It is special.
Yeah,
you
no doubt.
Struggled with that. It was so special. It's a special episode. It's the German special.
That wasn't a struggle. That was drama. That's what I was going for. Anyway, we are joined by two guests today. We've got Larry and Anthony from the Retro Gamers podcast. Guys, introduce yourself. Larry, start us off.
Oh my gosh, what's going on, fellas? Nice to see you guys again. And yes, this is Larry from the Retro Gamers podcast, myself and Anthony. We're also kind of two middle-aged guys who try and work things out, but we're on the video gaming side of it. And me and Ant have been podcasting for a few years now. And this is a good one for us. Not often that we're guests on a show.
No, it's not, and we're very grateful to be your guests. So thank you very much. And I'd like to just to correct one thing Larry said, is that I am one middle-aged guy who has given up trying to figure it all out, because you know what? Let's just leave it be.
That's probably good advice, but if we listen to that, we wouldn't have a show.
Yeah.
So we got to try to figure it out.
Well, no, even though you let it be, you still have to figure out other things. So it's all good.
Well, welcome, guys. We are thrilled to have you. We're trying not to do strictly a video game topic, but I think it's a topic that has some, it winds together a little bit.
Yeah, it touches all areas of media and pop culture.
It absolutely does. Before we get to that topic, though, Dave, I'm going to kick it over to you because I think you've got some calibration to do.
That's right. So our listeners have had an opportunity to hear Chris and I's opinion on things. They know what we think. They know whether or not they can trust us. So I'd like to have a special edition of Can You Trust Us? The Larry and Anthony Retro Gamers edition. So I'll just ask you guys a few questions and you answer honestly and quickly, right? Get the first thing that comes into your head out. And we'll just see if your opinions are aligned with those of our listeners, so they'll know whether or not they should continue listening to the episode. I hope they are. Whether or not they can trust your opinions going forward. So,
this is dangerous.
Yes. I think you'll find this to be pretty tame. This is a special Retro Gamers edition, so I must sprinkle in a few video game things, too, as well. So, all right, so first question for the two of you. Apple or Android?
Apple.
Android.
All right. I have been on both. I'm currently on Android. I'm feeling pretty good about that, but there's no wrong answer to that one anymore.
Yes, there is.
All hail Apple. All hail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
3-1.
Spot. All right. Here's the next one. This is, I think, a much more challenging one than Apple or Android. Mario 3 for the NES or Super Mario World for the Super NES?
See, I'm going to go Mario 3.
I am also going to go Mario 3.
Yeah, it's a good answer. Can I suggest what I think is a lazy and possibly maybe the laziest out you could have on this? Mario 3 on Super Mario All-Stars for the Super Nintendo. That's a perfect answer to the question. It checks all the boxes.
That is a
perfect answer.
That was the best version of the game, probably.
Yeah, Mario. You know what? Mario 3. We're lining up here. All right. If you were forced, I'm not saying you have to love either of these two things, but if you were forced to sit down and watch a series of movies and your choices were Star Wars or Star Trek, which would you pick?
Oh man. You know what? I'm going to go Star Trek.
I think I'm going to have to go Star Wars. I have never watched Star Trek.
Wow.
None of it?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, no,
I've seen 2 episodes. The very first one, and then an episode that a friend of mine wrote. That's it.
They're going to come for your nerd card.
That's okay. Hey, it would be the first time in my life I can give it up.
What version of Star Trek did your friend write for?
The Next Generation.
Wow. That's damn you, Will
That's
Wheaton.
Awesome.
Darn you, Will. I have a personal vendetta against Will Wheaton. So, that also fits right in.
Because you are Sheldon Cooper.
Did you meet him at a...
I sure did.
Yeah, oh boy.
He was the first one I ever actually got into an argument with at a comic convention.
Oh goodness.
So yeah,
The first of many.
Oh no, and then Kirk was another one. Kirk was next. So I've gotten into arguments with two different Star Trek actors from two different generations.
Wait, are you saying William Shatner? You got in an argument with William Shatner?
Not as much an argument, but like I'm like dumbfounded. But
Larry,
when I was,
stop talking. They're gonna kick you off the show.
No, I'm actually. This is a great story. You've got to tell this story. This is way better than anything we're going to talk about.
no. I mean, again, not as super. I mean, with Kirk, it was more like he had no line at a comic convention. He was the only one charging extra for his 8x10s. No one ever charges for their 8x10s, like the actual ones on the table. And then like he goes up, like I was talking to him. He put me on the pay no mind list after I gave him my money. And he's like, "Oh, check out some flyers over here of my new spoken word album." And then I went to grab one. I went to take one. He goes, "Please don't take a flyer." I'm like, "You just told me to look at the flyers." He's like, "I can't afford to reprint any others." I'm like, "I'm paying $90 to see you. What are you talking about?"
This is a great William Shatner story.
Will Wheaton was worse.
Well,
I think you just
can do
wrote
it
an episode of the revival of the Big Bang Theory. I think you could bring it back and make it funny this time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was going to say, you guys can have an entire episode on Larry's enemy list from conventions, Twitter. He's got a long list. Straight down to my personal favorite is Viral Beauregard from Willy Wonka.
The original Willy Wonka. Yep.
Yes.
Well, we know what the next topic is when
Yes.
we bring those back on.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Okay. Last question here. And I put this one on the list, Anthony, when I heard you were coming. I really can't wait to hear your answer to this, both of you, but this one should be a good one for you, Anthony. What was the first movie or movie character that really scared you?
I don't know if Anthony gets scared. Well, while he's thinking, I can say Ghoulies. Remember that movie Ghoulies?
Yes.
Because for some reason, I watched it with my father when I was younger. And if you remember the cover art, it was the monsters coming out of the toilet bowl.
Yep, absolutely.
I didn't use the facilities for like a week. And I was so scared. That actually, to tie that and what is that?
Close Encounters?
Close Encounters. Yes, that freaked me out. I mean, nowadays it's factual, but it freaked me out.
Off the top of my head, Bill Cosby.
Okay,
But no. So
is it a Ghost Dad joke? Did we just get our first Ghost Dad joke?
Sure,
Maybe.
why not?
might be
Second?
No, I just remember how I didn't trust him as a kid. If I gotta pick a horror movie film character, I honestly, and Larry's right, I don't scare very easily. Even as a kid, I'd probably say the first one that really freaked me out was Pennywise, and I'm talking about the Tim Curry version.
Yes, very scary.
Very scary. I had read the book shortly before that, before the TV movie came out, and at that point I was like 10.
Yeah.
So
That's a heavy read for a 10-year-old.
Oh yeah, no, and trust me, I didn't get most of it. I was like, but I definitely got scared. The leper scene in that book just freaked me out. I was very happy it wasn't in the TV movie. But Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise, to me, I remember that scaring the heck out of me.
It's a good, solid answer.
It is. I will say this, and I think this leads into what we're going to talk about today. Chris, I'd like to hear this. Larry, mine is very similar to yours because this was a movie that as a child I never saw, but I did see the video at the video store and was terrified. And still, as an adult, I will not watch these movies, even though I somehow own all of them. And that is the Friday the 13th. I think it was part 4, the one where it had the knife through Jason's hockey mask.
Yeah.
That terrified me as a child. And I was so scared of him, even though I didn't even know what he was or who he was, but I knew that was a scary picture that I saw at the video store, and that really terrified me.
I would have thought Corey Feldman bald would scare you more than that.
I know of that now, but because I have watched some of those movies, but as a kid I did not watch them. I was just too much of a scaredy cat. So, Friday the 13th. Yes, I bought all of the entire collection on Vudu for $10. I was trying to build my Vudu collection. And
Nice.
and then I realized I will never watch these because they scare me too much.
Yeah, they were rough. Well, I mean, growing up, me and Aunt, known each other since high school, and our group of friends back then, I was never into horror, and they basically forced me into watching all of these movies. And totally, and it ruined my childhood. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. Some
I'd like to
trauma.
think
I like
that
starting the episode off with trauma.
Yeah, I'd like to
Absolutely.
think that I've always ruined your childhood and adulthood at this point.
I love you, Ant.
And that leads to our topic today, which is the thrill of the hunt. And what do I mean by that? I mean that today we can go to our web browser and we can get absolutely anything. Any movie we want to see, any music we want to listen to, almost any video game we want to play is just right there. But when I was a kid, it didn't happen that way. And there would be things that I'd hear rumors about that I wasn't even sure it was true or that it really existed, but I would be hunting through stores and flea markets and video rental places and what have you, trying to find this one particular movie or one particular game or whatever it was. And I want to talk about not only the experiences that we've had searching for things and hunting for things throughout our lives, but I also want to talk about what have we lost by having everything available with no questions, with no effort, with no anything. So I know that Dave and I have had some unique experiences with the hunt. We're in the middle of America. You guys are in a much more populous, sprawling, available city.
Metropolitan
That's a good word.
culture.
Megaopolis, perhaps we could say.
Sure, rub it in.
And so maybe you had a different experience hunting for things as a kid. So I'd love to hear if you guys have any stories or memories about hunting for items, things that you couldn't find, things that you were trying to seek out.
I mean, I and you're right. You know, me and Anthony, we grew up in Brooklyn. You know, definitely New York City. So a lot of things were more available to us, even back in the day. I just remember, and I guess it's all going to be compared to now, obviously, because you have to compare it to something. So you're going to repair it, you know, not having the internet versus having the internet. One of the earliest memories I had, well, not earliest because I was 10 when it happened, but just like waiting for a movie to be released on home video. And, you know, not knowing when it's coming out, not knowing if it's really coming out at all. And it was the first, for me, it was the first live action Turtles movie. Because that was the only movie actually I've ever seen in the theater with my parents.
I remember seeing that in the theater with you.
Yep,
Chris.
I was there.
So, and I loved it, of course, absolutely. I still adore it. But I just remember as a kid, like, knowing that maybe one day I was going to be able to watch it at home again, because it's not like I was able to go on to the internet and check out clips of it right away, or be able to go on and like check out reviews immediately. I had to wait. And that movie came, actually, I think the movie came out on my birthday in March of 1990. It ultimately came out in October on video. But I just remember, like, every day, like during that time period, just felt like an eternity. Again, because I had nothing to gauge on. So I just had to wait. And waiting, especially when you're a 10-year-old, stinks.
Now, I may be like pulling too much from Seinfeld here, but did you ever go out to the streets of New York and buy the bootleg videos?
Well, not at 10.
Okay. Wait, I thought you guys did that there.
Especially not in the 90s. Especially the early 90s. I don't think none of us was stepping foot in the
Pre-Giuliani, you were not going out there to do that.
Thanks, Dinkins. No, but it's actually bootleg. Yeah, I don't even remember really seeing a lot of bootlegs in where we grew up. I mean, we didn't meet each other till our teens, but still, I don't remember much of that.
They were more relegated to the train stations.
That's true.
So so if you were if you went close to a train station entrance, you would sometimes find guys selling bootlegs there.
Which, and I don't mean this in a weird way. It almost sometimes, and again, this is back in the early 90s, like that was almost like a seedy area. So like, you know, like that's where you kind of, you know, I was like, oh, all right, there are the movies and other things. But, that's probably, where you would find the bootlegs. But no, I never even thought of it, but I just remember it took forever to finally get that VHS tape.
Now, if I remember right, Ninja Turtles was one of the faster turnaround VHSs, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Looking back on it, definitely. But I read this thing a long time ago about, like, scientifically speaking, there's a reason why we feel like time speeds up as we get older. Like, we feel like time flies, and it made sense to me. It's because as we get older, we have more memories, And as we have more memories, it feels like we have more to go back on. So it feels like time flies. Where when we're a kid, we don't have much to go back on. So it feels like it takes forever. But that, again, that's as I digest. That just, that was wild for me.
Well, and just to add to the video thing, obviously the thing we didn't know as kids that we may have learned later is that video rental stores had agreements with the distribution companies so that they were able to get the videos. They were able to get the VHS for a certain period of time before they were allowed to be sold in stores. That's the main reason why all of these took forever to come out to buy.
The rental pricing collusion.
Yes, not when I was a kid, but when I was a little bit older, like right after high school or like in my senior year, I worked in a video store. So I used to see like what it would cost the video store to get those tapes, because it wouldn't be like, oh, it's like $15, $20 in the store. They would cost like hundreds of dollars per tape. So I would think about Blockbuster, like when Blockbuster would get a new release and they'd have like 50 of them. I'm like, that costs them like a few $1,000s.
So I guess did you work at a chain, Anthony?
No, I worked at a local store right around the corner from where I lived. And it was a great setup, because I would just go there, put my feet up, literally put my feet up on the counter. I just hang out there. People would come in and rent stuff. I'd watch movies all day. At that time, Sony PlayStation was the hot console, so I would bring it to the video store and just play video games. It was a sweet gig.
Did they have the employee recommendation wall at that store, and did you participate in that?
They did not have that, unfortunately. And if I ever participated in it, they would just all be horror movies anyway. So.
That was a fun thing, Chris. I don't know.
Yeah.
I remember going to the video store and the rental stores, and especially some of the cooler ones. You would look at the employee recommendations. Now, thinking back on it, the employees didn't know anything, right? It's not like they had it was like Leonard Maltin was, working a part-time shift there at the video store. It was just, kids a little bit older than us that were, they thought, Wild at Heart by David Lynch was cool. So they put it on the thing, and then kids like us would rent it, and we shouldn't have. And I loved the video store. It's cool that you worked at one. The video store experience is, to me, that's where this is. The video store experience is the perfect representation of the challenge of the digital age. Is that there was something that you got out of that visit that was more than just the movie you walked out with. It was a whole thing. You could look at the art on the VHS, and then later the DVD boxes, and you interacted with people. You saw what other people were renting. You saw what you couldn't rent because it was out, and that made you want to rent it even more. Even though you weren't really interested in a box set of Ron Perlman's Beauty and the Beast TV series on VHS, but you would see that, right? And you're like, oh, that's cool because other people have rented it. There was just something about that whole experience. Now you reach out and take anything you want. I mean, it's great, and I wouldn't trade it, but I do miss something, that video store experience. Oh, I miss that so much.
Well, and don't forget the secret area behind the curtain.
Well, we did not have a lot of we had a few, but I wasn't allowed to go into the video store. I think our local video store, which was the greatest place on the planet, Ted's TV, did not have a dirty movie room.
True. They just had them mixed in.
They just had
mixed in.
No,
it was like,
didn't care what you rented.
It's like Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast. Wait, what? What is this one?
They didn't care what you rented either. I remember renting many R-rated movies that I should not have been allowed.
Oh, and I remember, like, you made the David Lynch joke, but we rented Blue Velvet once.
Yes.
And then
should not have been allowed to rent that.
But that was like open season for them to recommend the weirdest movies to us they could possibly
you kids
find.
like this kind of movie? Well, let me talk to your parents first, and then I'm going to recommend some movies to you that are maybe not legal in all those 50 states, but they're fine here in Missouri. All right, so I got to tell a story now. A VHS. So the VHS, I cannot not tell this story. I've been waiting since we brought this podcast online for the right moment. Now this is the moment, Anthony. Thank you for opening the door. When I was a kid, of course, we rented from Ted's TV, and there's a few other video stores. Ted's TV was an old Curtis Mathis dealership on the bad side of town that no longer sold Curtis Mathis TVs because they weren't a thing in the early 90s. Anyways, but one of the other sources, though, is my aunt and uncle. They had a library of books and of movies that they purchased as well as recorded off of HBO, Cinemax, all that stuff. They had all the movie channels. They would record movies. And a lot of the time, I think they just recorded movies, big movies, without ever really watching them, right? So they knew, hey, this was on, Star Wars is on, Empire Strikes Back is on. So anyways, I was looking through their shelves, and each movie had, as you can imagine, slow play. They had 6 hours, so they were able to get 3 movies on most VHS. So I would borrow movies. One day I discovered RoboCop. It was the second movie on a VHS tape, and I borrowed that movie all the time, and I loved watching RoboCop. Maybe not an appropriate movie for a 12-year-old kid, but still, it's a great movie. It's RoboCop. One day my older brother comes over, and he looks at the VHS tape. That was my oldest brother, and he goes, hey, Dave, have you ever watched the movie after RoboCop? And I said, no, I fast forward to RoboCop. I watch RoboCop. It's the middle one. And I rewind it. And I watch it again. He goes, okay, good. Because that movie after RoboCop is an X-rated movie. And I'm like, okay. So, and now I'm like 12, 13. I have a choice here, right? I could watch an X-rated movie, or I could risk losing my RoboCop privileges. And I was like, I'm not risking don't tell anybody. I'm not going to watch it, but I got to keep RoboCop. The movie was on there, and I remember he said, this is Lady Chatterley's Lover with Adam West. And I've never watched that. I don't know. But I did look it up when I got older. I remember, I was like, that is really legitimately rated X. No one should be watching this.
It's kind of like a Midnight Cowboy type situation. Okay, yeah.
I just could not risk losing my RoboCop privileges. Incidentally, the same aunt and uncle in their library, they had in their VHS library, had a copy of Crocodile Dundee 2 that stayed wrapped until they sold off their library in auction for 20 years. It stayed wrapped well after VHS. Yeah, we'd always joke, hey, Crocodile Dundee 2, they still haven't cracked that one open yet.
That's because some movies aren't worth opening.
Well, I mean, if you needed a knife judged, then you would watch Crocodile Dundee. That's not a knife. That's a knife.
It's so good you don't want to open it. You want to keep it pristine.
Well, maybe in your collection.
It's like my VHS copy of Reptilicus.
I think we got another VHS Discovery story that you have to tell, because it is. To me, it is the representative of the search. Right. The find, and then, what comes after.
So I'm going to back up the discussion a little bit, because I wanted to touch on a few things that have come out of light of this. And one is something we've lost by having everything at our fingertips is, in a lot of real ways, the accidental discovery.
Yeah.
That's kind of a thing of the past. So one thing that Dave and I used to do is we had that giant Leonard Maltin Guide to Movies book, and we would watch a movie that we rented, and we would be like, oh, well, let's learn more about this movie.
What's Leonard say? Yeah, what else is he going to recommend?
Exactly.
I know he's putting in a shift at the video store later, but when he's done with that, I want to see what Leonard has to say.
Well, and we'd look up who directed the movie, who was in it, and what other things have they done. And one of the things that we got from that Blue Velvet rental was the works of David Lynch, and one that caught our eye was Eraserhead. And I don't know, Larry Anthony, are you familiar with this film?
I saw it a long time ago.
I never saw it.
So it's a bizarre film, to say the least.
Yeah.
But we wanted to see it. We desperately wanted to see, more of this David Lynch guy, but also the way Leonard Maltin described it. It sounded amazing.
There's a baby in a radiator. What? I don't even. There's like weird stuff. Like, I don't know what this is.
Right.
I want to see it
because we were crazy.
Yeah.
So we hunted out this movie, and of none of the video rental stores in Springfield.
Called every store.
Yeah, went through the yellow pages, video store, never found it, but never gave up the hunt. And we kept calling, and anytime there was a new video store, we would check it out. And finally, we found one video store that had this movie.
They also rented Laserdiscs, to give you an idea of the kind of video store this was, right? They were like cutting edge. Yeah.
I've never seen anyone rent Laserdiscs. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah, and it's a very dangerous proposition to rent a Laserdisc.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we found the movie. But then I had to beg my parents to get a membership at this new video store that we would never go to again.
Yep. And then drive all the way over there, because it was 20 minutes on the other side of town.
Yeah,
And then we got it.
but we finally got Eraserhead,
Yeah.
and Dave rushed over and we watched it, and we didn't understand what we were watching.
It's wordless. We're looking at each other like, what is this? I feel weird. They have to return this soon. Do we tell them how bad it was even after making?
And the answer is
drive
no.
over there?
We don't. We say it was great. But it was adventures like that we had as kids.
Yeah. And you're not, the digital age, you just don't, and I've got something I was going to talk about later, but it's hard to replicate that in the digital age. I mean, I do the doom scrolling through, all the different streaming services. I'm sure you guys, like us, between either the ones that I own or the ones that I've borrowed in my network of sharing, I've got access to every service, right? And you just scroll and scroll and scroll, and it's just almost too easy to pass things up. There's no hook. Like, oh, I need to see that, right? Like, I don't know. It's tough.
No, it is. And in me and Ann have talked on our podcast, and granted, it's more gaming wise, but we've always talked about digital versus physical. And you guys did it too. You guys did an excellent episode about digital versus physical a few episodes ago. And you're right. Today's day and age, you just listening to the radio. I mean, I remember I recorded radio to try and get that one song to play because I couldn't afford to go out or I was too young to go out to get the album or something like that, or the album wasn't available. And nowadays one of the updates from Apple was now built into the iPhone is Shazam.
Ooh. Oh, sorry. You said iPhone.
Is Shazam. And literally, so if I'm hearing a song on that's streaming, I just click Shazam, and then it brings me to Apple, to the iTunes store, and I can purchase it from there. Whereas back in the day, again, I had to wait to listen and catch the song.
Yep, because it also, not only could you not get out there, but it was one song that you liked. You weren't going to buy a cassette for one song,
I bought singles, but you're right. Not every song was a single, though.
Not every song was a single, and not every single, even if they were singles were hard to find, even when Walmart was selling singles. Singles could be hard to find. So I remember that with the tape deck, just waiting for that NSX song to come on so I could record Devil Inside or something like that. And, and I had that mixtape, and yeah.
Yeah, I remember making all those mixtapes too. But I think, I honestly think what happened was after vinyls went away, because 45s were really popular. You were able to really get your hand on singles if you had a 45. Once they switched over to cassette, they started to limit the amount, and then by the time you got to CD, singles were very, very rare.
Because the fixed price to produce a cassette was the same cost for a single, or roughly the same cost. Yeah,
exactly.
There's a whole thing, right? Same with CD singles, right?
Yeah, at least with vinyls, you were getting half the size of an actual record.
And then sometimes the B-side would be some weird song you never heard of. I mean, I don't know if you guys had it out there. We had over in, now we're going to go local, so forgive us, at the Kings Plaza Mall, we had a Suncoast.
Oh yeah, I got it on my list.
No,
Suncoast is on my notes.
You know what?
You got to go to Suncoast.
I spoke out of turn. Suncoast, yes. I meant to say Sam Goody.
Oh, okay. We did not have one.
But we had a Suncoast and we had a Sam.
We did, but I want to go Sam Goody. Forgive me. Sam Goody was music. So, and I remember going in, and there were definitely a lot of singles, and I remember discovering a lot of songs from the B-side on a lot of singles, and which one of them is and I have no problem admitting this right now, being a huge Spice Girls fan. I bought almost all the singles that were available. I'm gearing up for their possible 30th tour. If they come to New York, oh man, I'm there. But
now go all the way. Go to London.
Well, I would go to. Are you kidding me? In a heartbeat, I would.
Don't come back.
But but a lot of their singles though also were exclusive to. Actually, in general, a lot of exclusives were in Japan, because Japan got a lot of interesting singles, a lot of interesting longer albums. You know what I mean? Like extra songs on an album. And I remember, again, no internet. I remember finding these small store, especially in the city. Now, this is where we're talking about. I was older, so like late high school, early college. I would be venturing into the city then at that point on my own and finding some of these hole in the wall music places that sold imported items. And
I loved that. Oh, the imports, the UK imports. I remember in the mid 90s seeking out David Bowie UK import singles, and you'd get these weird tracks you couldn't get anywhere else. And those record stores were all so fun.
They were, well, not all of them that I've been to, but real quick before you go, no, but I just remember like discovering all these other singles and albums, and later on, if you want to get technical as far as like multimedia, they were like, the music videos were put onto the CDs and stuff like that. But and I don't know if you're about to mention now, but we have some like how we stumbled upon imports with video games.
Yeah, and well, I was going to touch on two things. One, so that one, in terms of video games, when I worked at the video store in the mid 90s, I had basically learned it's like we could order whatever we wanted for the store, right? So we would get a catalog, like a physical book, those big physical books, giant catalog of just stuff that we can look at. And I would flip through them and I would find video games in there. I'd be like, oh, it's like I can order video games from here. And I would talk to my boss. I'd be like, hey, if I want a video game, can I just order it and I'll pay you? And she was like, yeah, sure, whatever. We have the book. So that's how I first started ordering Japanese video games. So I would just order them from the book. They would arrive at the video store. I'd pay for them and I would take them home. And it was awesome. Larry and I being big wrestling fans at the time. I know Larry's still a wrestling fan. But like one of the games that we picked up was Fire Pro Wrestling, which didn't exist here in the US. And yeah, it was just kind of awesome to do stuff like that. I actually pulled out my copy because I kept it.
You still got it. There it is.
Yeah, it's kind of been around the world a bit, or around the country a few times, so it's a little busted. Days. But I still have my original copy of the one. This is the one I ordered when I worked at the video store back in '96.
Very nice.
And it's just a nice piece of history.
And just and real quick, just to piggyback on that, nowadays I just go on Amazon app. I literally changed from US to Japan. And I've ordered some of these systems that never mind, we're not doing video. Some of the systems behind me that you guys can see, have been imported from Japan, but it's just so easy. It's just 1, 2, 3, and to have full access of buying stuff in Japan where we didn't even know. Oh, actually, that's like, when did we discover there was a Famicom versus an NES? Like, when did we know? Yeah,
years later. For me, it was the internet. Yeah, the internet taught me that.
Totally.
But I also, I have a lot of Japanese consoles, but I did it the hard way. I actually went to Japan and bought them. But the other, I was going to circle back really quickly on videos because one other thing, and Larry's aware of this too, because at the time in the mid 90s, if I had worked in Manhattan after the video store, I got a job in Manhattan, and in Manhattan, there were tons of stores that you can go to, but I would go to this one store specifically in Midtown, near my job, where I could buy, VHS tapes that were either imported or ones that were illegal in like 47, 48 states. Because at the time, like I had started getting into UFC.
Oh yes, I remember this.
And UFC was banned at the time in almost every state. So I found this little rinky-dink store that I would go in, and I would just buy copies of UFC tapes that we would watch, and I would buy copies of Japanese wrestling events. That's where I first got a copy, Larry, of the death tournament.
Oh yeah, those wild
ones where people were fighting, like throwing each other in broken glass.
Yeah, it was wild. Thumbtacks, like, it was crazy.
Yeah, all this crazy stuff.
Welcome to the 90s.
But again, those are the types of things, like, if you want to right now, you can go online and you can YouTube it and probably watch it. I was like, it'll take you 30 seconds. I would scour, I would go to this one store, but like, otherwise I'd have to just scour the city.
Yeah.
To find a store that would possibly carry something like that.
So Anthony, I'll give you the Springfield, Missouri version of that story, which is, we never had the weird little store. We never had anything of that sort. I remember being 19, maybe somewhere around there, and learning that there were other seasons of Sailor Moon that Cartoon Network never got. And so I had to mail order fan subs of Sailor Moon. And that was a huge thing. Like I had to write a $150 check, mail it off to somebody I didn't know.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know if I was going to get anything back in the mail or not. But thankfully, this beautiful set of VHS tapes that were fan subbed and had gorgeous printed labels all over, they arrived. And so then that opened a whole new world to me. And that's what we were dealing with in the middle of the country. I had to mail things.
Wow. Well, and please tell me they were not the horrible US version Sailor Moon that came out?
Correct. They were the Japanese subbed into America, and it blew my mind. And I got every single season of Sailor Moon, and to this day, Sailor Moon has one of the greatest character deaths of any show ever. But I have to temper it because asking someone to watch 5 seasons of Sailor Moon to get to this one moment is a big ask. I'll admit that. But man, it was great, and that opened up another universe because we had nothing like that in Springfield, Missouri. No.
You know, that reminded me of again talking about with pre-internet and trying to find stuff. And let's back in the day, like going to like a small wrestling show and tape swapping. And kind of Anthony made the point of like, when he discovered the Japanese wrestling tapes, and that I found some of that as well through some people through college, finding some of these videos, but kind of bring you into my world. Back, especially in the 90s, you go to a wrestling show, not like a WWE show, nothing like that, but like a small, what they call independent show, which is everyone other than WWE then, and there'd be a table set up of just tons of VHS tapes of again matches from across anywhere outside the US that we never had access to, old matches that we probably forgot about, and a lot of discovery for me in my fandom of wrestling came from a lot of tape swapping. And I would remember even going, oh, I need to find this match, of so-and-so versus so-and-so, or like Hogan versus Inoki over in Japan, where Hogan actually wrestled. Like Hulk Hogan did more than 3 moves. And having to go to a few different shows, like not like, all right, I didn't find it here, let me immediately go here, like over time, and then finally finding the tape and then watching it. So that, talk about literally the hunt, which could take months or years. And it was so much fun too, just watching those tape trades, just seeing what was available and stuff. You kind of get a little bit of that when you go to a convention sometimes, a comic book convention, for people who sell, bootlegs of VHS or something that's now converted to DVD. Or like Chris, like you said, like someone will sell like all 5 seasons of Sailor Moon or like old cartoons that like no one has the rights to anymore. So it's kind of fun to kind of sit there and just flip through and see what's available.
You just reminded me that I'm still on the hunt for one specific show that I still can't find.
TV or wrestling?
Wrestling.
Oh, now I'm curious.
January '94, Madison Square Garden.
Oh, was
the
that? Yes,
the Royal Rumble, the local Royal Rumble they did.
Oh, see, that'd be a little tough to find nowadays. But because they used to air on the MSG network. I don't know if you guys used to get MSG out there. I don't know if that was
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
It sounds bad for your health.
MSG was localized at the time.
Okay,
it really was.
I thought it was big enough. I thought Madison Square Garden was big enough to be nationwide.
Oh, Madison Square Garden.
Okay,
now I understand.
Not monosodium glutamate. Got it.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I said this is
Larry,
going.
Larry, check your ego.
No. I'm just saying, like, I thought everyone knew what MSG was.
No, they do. Often found in Chinese food.
Yes, it's delicious, and I swell up, and it's great. I love it.
In any event.
So MSG, that's where the Highlander movie started, right? That's how I know MSG from.
That's right. There can only be one.
Hey, so
in our defense, we do know Madison Square Garden. We just didn't know the abbreviation.
Yeah, never thought about it like that.
That's I want to say it's a cultural thing, but it's Missouri versus New York. What do we?
Did you guys?
I think that's a topic for another show.
It will be.
Oh, yes. Did you guys have? And I know you've talked about on your podcast, which we love, the Retro Gamers podcast. You've talked about Funko Land and going in there and trading in like an entire collection of things and walking out with one thing, which we've all had those experiences, but what we had here, and I don't know if you guys had them there.
Experience.
The GameStop experience. It still exists, right? But we had pawn shops where you could do 2-for-1 NES game trades. And for a while, it was just kind of free-for-all. You'd bring in 2 black box games, right? Baseball and whatever, right? And Donkey Kong, and you could walk out with Ninja Turtles, the arcade game, Turtles 2.
Wow.
And for a while, we did have that, right? It was fairly unregulated. Did you guys have anything like that?
No, we got mostly, it was just mostly the large chains. Funkoland was the first one that came in, which then became Electronics Boutique. But no, I never remember, I can honestly say, Nan, I don't know about you, even the stores in the city, you know, the hole-in-the-wall stores, I don't ever remember really anyone doing, like, buying back games or movies or music. Well, maybe music.
Well, correction. I do remember buybacks, but it was always that they would give you a price for it. They would never say trade 2 or 3 and then you get one. It's always like, we'll give you $1, we'll give you $4, whatever it is.
But it was a lot of the larger chains. You know, we dealt with a lot of large. It's weird. In New York City, it was either a large chain or like a store that popped up for 20 minutes, you know, and then had to be shut down.
Well, it didn't get shut down. It just moved 3 blocks.
But that's
over.
true, yes.
We had that. I don't know if Chris, you remember the little pawn shop chain of pawn shops we had here that did the 2-for-1 NES.
Oh
games,
yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Do you remember us being kicked out and no longer allowed to go in there? Because at some point we would go in there and trade. Right, we'd bring in our our 2 scrub games, our TLC Surf Designs, and something else that's awful. Right, a Taboo. Right, we'd bring those 2 games in. We'd try to get something great like Super Mario 2, and. But at a certain point, they stopped letting us go in there. And they would get like, no, you guys can't come in. Like, well, we'll get our parents. No, forget it. And I never really understood it. I think maybe it was just the instability of the pawn shop worker at the time that we kept going to. He was just unstable. And they all carried guns, so you took them very seriously. Because it was a pawn shop, right? They had jewelry and high-dollar things, and they'd shoot you if they,
Oh, 100%.
But yeah, that was fun to go in and trade and have that experience and not get shot. It was less fun when the gun got pulled, but
now that I think about it, we were kicked out of a lot of stores, and I'm wondering if the common denominator was you.
As an adult, I will tell this very brief story. I was asked to never return to the Bose outlet in Branson, Missouri, because I returned too many speakers, and because I couldn't decide on the speakers that I wanted. I kept returning them. This was back when Bose, this is 20 years ago, when Bose had a lot of product, not just one sound bar. But I was the district manager called and said, this next purchase you make is your last. You cannot come back in here. And I'm an adult at that point. I'm like, that's weird, but it'll be a great story someday. And now I'm telling it.
There it was. Yeah.
Larry, what's your list of places you've been kicked out of?
I don't think again, that's more digital than physical. But to be fair, Twitter blocked me, but they admitted it was their mistake. So now I'm on X. So I'm back, baby.
I was going to say that was probably the only mistake. All the other ones have been legitimate.
I speak my mind.
You do, and you get punished.
Do you guys ever find yourself now, like going to a flea market, going to Goodwill, and just saying, "Hey, is there anything here of value?"
Yes.
Yeah, I do. Out here on Long Island, they definitely have, like, every Saturday or every Sunday, I should say. They have tons of flea markets here over at the train stations. And I don't as much ask, because I feel like the people who are running the tables, they're just there to move merch. But I've definitely find myself perusing through when I go to the conventions, just seeing what's available, like that odd, might be buried underneath everything, that odd. And that's where nowadays I usually end up finding some odd stuff, because I actually found a recent game on Atari. I just went to what was called Eternal Con a few weeks ago out here by Hofstra University. And it was a game for the Atari called Crypts of Chaos. I'll show you guys. And I've never heard of this game. It looks like a horror-based game for Atari, so you can figure out what that might look like. But I've never heard of it. But here's the thing. I was able to quickly YouTube it, look at it, and then gauge right then and there if it looks enjoyable. And it did, and I bought it. And we've talked about this on the podcast, where back in the day, especially if you want to talk Atari, the only way you knew how good the game was by the cover art, and sometimes that was extremely misleading.
Yes.
All the time. I'm not sure if there was an Atari game that had cover art that represented it, the system would have sold like 4 units because
Exactly.
it was pretty bad. But that is interesting, though, Larry. That is a great point because that YouTubing it, eBay. That's kind of taken the fun out of going. I went to Goodwill today myself, right? I work from home. I'm 5 minutes away from a Goodwill. I just took my lunch and just went and walked around just to kind of clear my head. I bought a stuffed Garfield for my daughter. It was kind of cool. She likes Garfield. You can't find that stuff. But, eBay's kind of taking the fun and YouTube a little bit, like, because they can look and say, oh, this thing I've got is worth $80 or it's being sold on eBay for $80. Now I'm going to ask for $100 for it, right? So finding good deals has gotten hard. And I'm not taking anything away from people trying to get the maximum that they can out of their stuff. But the eBay pricing has made it a lot less likely you're going to find something incredible out in the wild.
Yeah, it's definitely more difficult. There's no question about it. I think the places where you wind up getting like the best deal are, and not picking on you guys, but smaller places, smaller towns. I mean, Larry, it's like growing up in a city like New York, or even, for example, like I lived in Los Angeles for a long time. It's like everybody seems to know what everything is worth, and that's just it. I went to one of the things Larry knows is that one of the things that I like to do now is whenever I travel to another state, I try to find a video game somewhere. And it doesn't matter where I go, as long as I pick up a video game. It's like, hey, I picked this up in this state. And I recently went on a cruise to Alaska. And if you want to find a challenge, try finding a video game in Alaska. It's a bit tough. So they had no video game stores there. So I was like, well, where else can I go? So I started looking up Goodwill. So literally we're at a stop off of a cruise ship on Alaska, and I'm running to a video game store or trying to find video games. But I found like 2, 3, 4 video games over the course of my trip just in these little Goodwill stores. And that was the only place I could find a video game.
I don't think I've ever been to a Goodwill.
Oh, I love Goodwills. And Goodwills and the various charity shops. Those are great.
Yeah, they're great. They're great pickups. You find random things in there. You really do. And and not only that, you find older stuff. Like, I showed them on our podcast. I picked up a copy of what was the name of it? Was it Wolfenstein?
Yes.
Yeah, I picked up like a copy of Wolfenstein for the PC from like 93.
Yep.
It's like, where am I going to find that for $2?
And what's just real quick, and then we move on. The flip side of where like I said, when I found that video game, I just easily went to YouTube, checked it out. When I go to the game stores, I go to Game On. That's the store that we always love to talk about, and that's out here on Long Island. And I'm constantly in there. I see a game, I pull it up on YouTube. Like I asked him years ago, I'm like, I know it's not public. What's your Wi-Fi? And he gave it to me. So now when I'm in there, I got the Wi-Fi going, and I'm literally going through the games. And at times I do kind of catch myself. I'm like, like maybe I should just, a leap of faith. Those are gone. As far as like buying a game or getting a movie and trying it out and hope for the best. Everyone walked into Phantom Menace going, "This is going to be phenomenal." That's not
me.
so much. Well, yeah, except for Ant was the only one that saved his money. I paid twice.
I am always a skeptic.
But and like I'm constantly in there just searching. But on the flip side, like if I have a table at a show, like I'm trying to sell stuff, and then people come up to my table because I'm selling Funko Pops, and they're pricing the Funkos, I'm going to be like, just buy it. Trust me, I'm the cheapest one in the room. I'm selling to move, not to profit. But yeah, it's digital, and the internet. Like going to concerts, going to wrestling shows, concerts, sporting events. Now everyone is live streaming the show. Yep. Where were the days of? And actually, you kind of just mentioned, like, you're trying to find that one wrestling show from Madison Square Garden in New York City. That back then no one was recording it, but nowadays, when you go to those local shows that aren't on TV, like you can your buddy's probably live streaming it. So having the, we're talking about the loss, losing that almost anonymity of trying to get something. I totally use that word wrong, and that happens often on our show. But just the ease of access I'm rambling so much,
Yeah.
I completely forgot what I was going to say.
I think what you're saying is that it's so that you've lost some. You know, I think this is a Zen saying, right? But the joy is in the journey, right? And sometimes the on the path to getting something, you will find many other things that you like as much.
That or having the experience just to yourself. You know, for the people at that concert or who were at the wrestling show or, you know, saw that epic home run, whatever. Only the people there would be able to, where nowadays you can pull it up and be like, oh, okay, let's all experience it. Where sometimes you're like, you know what, this is special. Only we saw this. And that's completely gone as well.
You're right.
That is.
So I want to start kind of wrapping down this conversation. And I want to ask this question. And I don't know the answer. Do you think that we are the last generation of collectors? And the reason I ask that question is because the fact that everything is available ad nauseum, 24 hours, 7 days a week, my kids don't give a crap about ownership. They don't care if they have to look for something. They don't care if it's unique, if it was that experience like you were just talking about, Larry. It doesn't matter. Because if they want a song, it's on Spotify. So do you think we're the last generation of that?
Wow, that's a good question. That's deep. Oh man, we don't get that deep.
It is.
I'm gonna say yes. Now that I think about it, now that you say that, I mean, I'm thinking of my godson, my cousin's kids, you know, my friends' kids. Like, yeah, they have everything, or they can find everything that they would want. You know, I mean, unless like, you know, they have that crave of looking for vinyls or, you know, like old vinyls and stuff. But yeah, and I got to think, you know, when I go into these stores, like with the video games and everything, really the only kids who are there, children, are ones who their parents are showing them this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's not cool.
Yeah. Well, I think my answer to that question is, in its current format, my answer is yes.
Yeah.
But I do think that collecting will continue. We just don't know exactly what it's going to be for them yet because everything is digital. So I think time is going to tell where, like, it's going to become a thing where they're going to be hunting to save things just digitally on a hard drive somewhere. It's like, I want to go back and find, perfect example, like I want to go find that concert that I went to in 2015. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's out there on the internet somewhere. It's like, once I find it, but I want to save it. So I just think collecting is going to take another form. I don't think it's going to be physical as much. But at the same time, we also see the way that things get revitalized and come back around. Like vinyl came out of nowhere and started to become a thing again. And now when you go to Target, all of a sudden there's a vinyl section and kids are buying vinyl. Like I have a niece, she's 12 years old. She has a record player and she buys vinyl. And it's just like, it's weird because it's like, why are they getting into vinyl again? But there all of a sudden is an appeal for that. So I feel like for the most part, it may shift into a different form. I was like, but there are still going to be some things that keep coming back around.
I agree. I do think that collecting will continue. I don't think it will be the things we collect or how we've collected them, as Ant said. So, do you mind if I call you Ant? I just realized that that's very familiar.
Yeah, I was going to say, are we that close?
Yeah. Well, okay.
I don't even call him Ant. How dare you? No, I'm kidding.
So, but no, I do think though that it will be different, right? And the stuff like the vinyl, because my son got into that for a little bit. He started collecting vinyl, thought it was cool, right? Everybody was he got a record player, but he bought this terrible record player with a terrible speaker, and so all the advantages of vinyl were not present: the sound quality, the richness, and all the disadvantages, the clunkiness, you can snap it in a second on accident, and the lack of flexibility in moving it around. So I think that some of that's to me like they're collecting it because they look cool, but they don't have utility. Whereas if you are a true vinyl collector and you've got a nice sound system, you're getting the utility out by listening to this perfect analog music. So I think that there'll always be those kind of kitschy things like that. But what that's really going to be the long-lasting type of collections, and there'll be stuff, I think baseball cards and some sports cards, because they are physical and they can be produced in small quantities. Those might be collectible, but I think it's just going to be a different type of collecting. I don't know.
Well, and just a note on your son with the vinyl. If his dad was allowed in the Bose store,
that's true.
Maybe he would have got better speaker, and he would still be listening to the vinyl.
That's very true.
You know, I'm going to point out that with the Phantom Menace thing, the collecting answer, and that comment right there, Anthony is the smartest person on this podcast.
I'm giving it to you.
Oh, you had to feed him. You had to feed that ego.
All right.
There's no feeding it. It just already existed.
No, he really trusts me. He is the smartest one here.
My last question, and then we can wrap this up. And I think I know the answer. Would you go back? Or are you happy with the way the internet works and the way things are now?
Ooh. I feel like this answer may or break our own podcast. I don't know, man. No, you know what? I like the way. I mean, I like the way things are now. Maybe it's just because I'm used to it. I mean, I'd go back and change a ton of other things, but just as far as it's just, I like the way it is now. It doesn't bother me as much. But we all gotta progress. Evolve. Things evolve. So I'm sticking with where we're at.
I was going to say, in the words of Morpheus from the second Matrix film, things happened the way they were supposed to happen and shouldn't happen any other way. So I'm very happy with the way things are. And then I also would like to end this podcast with a kung fu fight, if you guys are up for it.
I'm in. I'm always ready for a fight.
Fighting's always fun. I was just going to say, I was going to preface it with a question, because when you were asking that, my question was going to be, are you talking specifically with collecting, or are you talking about as a whole?
I was talking specifically about collecting and hunting and those products being at our fingertips.
Okay. When it comes to specific with, well, actually my answer I think may be the same either way. When it comes to collecting, personally, I would prefer to go back to the way that it was. Mostly because I feel like the ease of which it is now to just get your hands on things takes away that specialness to it. And I think when you went back, and we talked about this before, when you go back to hunting it down, trying to find it, the excitement of finally getting it and all of that stuff, there's no other feeling like that. There's no other sense of like accomplishment or reward when you get that. And I think now, like, it's become so, it just becomes so like unemotional. It becomes so flat that I miss that, and I would still like to have that. And unfortunately, thanks to advancements with the internet and everything like that, not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but it did take away that for me.
It's hard to have a sentimental attachment to a digital file.
Yes, even if it's an NFT.
Especially if it's an NFT, because it costs you a lot of money. Maybe the sentiment is anger after you buy an NFT.
That's really what it is. I have the NFT copy of Michael Jordan dunk that anybody else can watch on YouTube whenever they want, but I paid $1,000.
But it's yours, darn it.
That's right. You paid the most. You get the privilege.
I get the star.
Well, when we were on you guys' podcast, I made the comment that immediately I recognized that David was to Larry as I am to Anthony. And that carries on tonight, because I would also go back to the way it was. I miss it. And I understand that makes me an old crotchety man, and I'm okay with that.
Kudos. I've been an old crotchety man since I was 12. I'm all good.
Same here.
Well, guys, this was a great conversation.
100%.
We didn't even dive into Suncoast. I had 7 or 8 pages of notes on Suncoast. It's so funny you brought that up, because I didn't. But I did have that down in my notes, because that was a place of discovery. I mean, I think I said this on your guys' show when I was on, though, that flea markets are like museums for poor people, and that there is some truth in that. You can't afford to go to a museum, you can go to a flea market. That pop culture experience is there, like a mall. Even you get it. So there's a lot to be learned from this discussion. So I think, I don't know, Chris, what did we figure out today?
We figured out that half of us want to go back in time and half of us are happy.
All right.
We also figured out that MSG is Madison Square Garden.
That's true. That's true.
That honestly blew my mind. I can't help it.
Yes, we did. We'll have to bring you guys to Springfield, Missouri sometime. Open your eyes.
So, hey, wait, if we go back...
I do come to Missouri every once in a while, so I'll warn you guys.
Definitely, yeah, hit us up. But if we go back in time, wait, do we get to have the old Taco Bell menu? Because I might want to change my answer if I could have the 90s Taco Bell menu.
Ooh,
I'm
Ecto Cooler.
Oh, wow. I did not discover Taco Bell until the 2000s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't think we had a Taco Bell. No, we didn't.
No,
No.
we did not have a Taco Bell.
We were Burger King and
That's-
McDonald's all the way.
That's blowing my
McDonald's,
mind.
Burger King,
Yeah.
and McDonald's, Burger King, and a very questionable White Castle by our high
That
school.
is very true, yes.
I thought you guys had culture.
Like, personally,
Why would you think that?
Well, in New York, I thought it was a city.
We thought you
culture.
listened to our podcast.
No, I wasn't. I knew that wasn't the case personally, but I thought just the locale that the international foods of Taco Bell would be available.
Oh no, we had international foods. There was an IHOP.
and a Roy Rogers. There you go. You want to remember Roy Rogers? There's an episode just remembering what was available back in the day.
Oh boy. Well, guys, we have a couple of ideas for future episodes. We
Absolutely.
loved having you on. It was great.
Thank you so much.
Tell
This was a
everybody
lot of
where
fun.
they can find you.
And you want to hit him with it?
Oh wait. Oh, that's my speech.
Yes.
Okay, hold
This
on.
is verbatim.
This is verbatim. You guys can find us on Facebook.com/RetroGamersPodcast, on Instagram at RetroGamersPodcast, on Twitter at RetroGamersPod. You can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube at RetroGamersPodcast, or you can email us at email@theretrogamers.com.
And we have to update that. It's no longer Twitter. X.
Oh,
X.
no. It's Twitter.
No.
No, it's Twitter until it burns to the
Do
ground.
we go back in time?
Which is in about 3
Do
weeks.
we go back in time to Twitter before it was X?
That was incredibly smooth, Anthony. And I'm going to say you can find us at the numeral 2 middleagedguys.com. And we're on Facebook and Twitter, X, Twitter, whatever it's called.
The other one.
So we're on that too. And this has been great, guys. Thanks so much for doing this. And we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.